Super Bowl.
Brady goes for the deep shot. He's got a touchdown.
And Mahomes at bay.
The Tampa Bay Bucs, Super Bowl 55.
Hello and welcome to the Bucs Banter podcast. As always, I'm your host, Collin Hallboom, joined by one of my two co-hosts this evening. We got Scotty Cap in the building. Scott, what's good, buddy? How are you?
Not much, man. Not much. Doing well. Happy Super Bowl week. Let's get into it.
How about that? We took a little break last week, decompress. You know, we didn't have a
first. We needed a bye. We needed a bye too. You know, we're only human. What can we say?
First weekend without football and NFL football in quite a while. Felt strange, didn't it?
Super weird. Just legitimately super weird. Waiting for some weird Sunday night game to come on that I don't care about, yet I still end up betting on and watching until 11:30, and that just that never happened. You know, so live and learn, I suppose.
That's it. And we had to go tonight on Monday, February 7th, because Bucs fans, today is the 1-year anniversary of Super Bowl 55, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeated the Kansas City Chiefs, the juggernaut Kansas City Chiefs, 31-9, shut them out without a touchdown at Raymond James Stadium. And I haven't talked much about Mr. TB12. We haven't been on since the news became official. And this was talking about this Super Bowl. It was, Tom Brady's first year outside of New England. And I just kind of want to revisit that because despite winning 6 Super Bowls during his time there, Brady was more or less written off by Bill Belichick, who clearly didn't believe he still had what it took to get the job done. And, at that time, it wasn't just Bill Belichick either. A lot of the football world felt that way. So, when Tom Brady found himself considering his options when he hit free agency in that summer of 2020, he was, for the first time in his career, actually considering his options outside of New England. And in doing so, he came to the conclusion that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offered the most appealing destination for him to make a run at adding another Lombardi to his trophy case. And for the first time in a couple of years, I think he also felt truly valued by an NFL organization again. And I mean, everyone knows what happens next, but I can't help but summarize it once more because it's that unbelievable. But after leaving one of the winningest organizations in the history of the NFL to join what was literally the losingest organization in the history of all of professional sports, at 43 years old, Tom Brady won another fucking Super Bowl, but this time as a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I just, it's that incredible. It's really felt magical. So I'm at the point now where I've been able to decompress since the news and just kind of accept that and be thankful for what Tom Brady provided us as Bucs fans, me as a Buccaneers fan my whole life. So, I mean, I'm just feeling thankful and grateful to TB12 and truly astounded by his talent. I was always a Brady, not a hater. I guess I appreciated his greatness, but I was always cheering against him. I didn't want to see, the Patriots keep winning. Boy, did he turn me, man. I'm just an absolute stan for life of Tom Brady.
And I think, had he gone to any franchise, that would have been the general, sentiment of it, right? I'm sure a lot of people would have been in the same boat as you, Call. Just, all right, cool, Brady, you're awesome, but this is really boring, and I don't care for the Patriots, and Belichick's a bit of a dick, and Brady is the poster boy for the NFL's Super Bowls kind of looking the same for however many years, right? Because that's basically what it was. It was is Brady going to get there? There's a pretty good chance that he is. So I get that, but obviously, when Tampa got him, you were flipped, right? It's not like you didn't like the guy, you just didn't like what he was, what he symbolized, or just the fact that New England was so successful. So yeah, that's a great way to put it. Still just. And even there, when you said, from one of the winningest franchises to one of the losing, or to the losingest, obviously I knew that was true, but I don't think I'd ever actually thought of it that way, because he got so much credit, or he had, he had so much built up equity that I didn't think about Tampa as some losing, piss poor team, piss poor franchise, anything like that. Cause Well, they got Tom Brady, right? So it's good, but that can't be overstated enough. Just the lack of success in Tampa's history, and just he comes in there and wins a Super Bowl at that age. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, man. And that's like an objective fact, right? It's the losingest franchise in all of the
Yeah,
40
yeah,
major professional sports. So, like, everyone's seen all the stats and all that, but I just want to summarize a couple of my favorite. And I do want to focus briefly on just his time in Tampa Bay, of course, because, that's what we're here to talk about. So, he has more Super Bowls, first off, as a player than any franchise in NFL history. I think he's tied with like the Steelers and not the Cowboys. Whoever
Niners,
it is.
isn't
Is it? It might be Niners. Yeah, yeah.
It's the Niners.
But he's won as many. There's no franchise that's won more Super Bowls than him. He in his 20 seasons in the NFL, he's been to 14 conference championships out of 20 seasons, 10 Super Bowl appearances. So he's got that Phil Jackson 50% chance of making it to the ship, which is like that's one thing as a head coach. This is as a quarterback. Like that's just absolutely mind-boggling.
And his contemporaries, like nobody's got an even close to that percentage of conference championships or Super Bowl appearances, right? Let alone the wins. It's not even close. Like, don't take for nobody's taking for granted. I hate to be don't take for granted guy, but you got to the Super Bowl half the time, like just absolutely crazy. And I think the way the stats work out, like he had a higher conference championship game percentage than he actually did a completion percentage. So he was more likely, to get to the AFC Championship game than he was to complete a pass. Like I mean, there's so many different stats like that. It's kind of like when you get into the Tiger stats, and it's just we're never going to see that again. And like literally, you can get a different Tiger stat every day. You can get a different Brady stat every single day. That's just mind blowing. And, leaves no doubt as to who the best to ever do it has been.
Yeah, it's just undeniable, right? Like, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, and a lot of people would be like, Joe Montana, or, you got the Jordan LeBron debate and so on. There's no debate in football. It just can't be made. It's just too factual.
Yeah. But how lucky do you feel to have gotten him for these 2 years? I don't want to say he could have gone anywhere, but, for all intents and purposes, he could have gone anywhere, right? And he came to your team and they won the Super Bowl, and they easily, they could have been in that game again, right? Like had they pulled off that game against the Rams, they'd be favored in the Super Bowl again. Likely, I think they would have beaten San Fran, right? It's like so bittersweet. It's you know what I mean? Like it must just leave you wanting even more and more, but you got to be happy with what you got, right? So
yeah, like the greed has started to wear off a little bit, so I am able to kind of just enter that appreciation mode.
Yeah.
And 2 years in Tampa as a 43, his 43rd and 44th year as a human.
Unbelievable.
He won 29 of his 39 games played, 5-1 in the postseason. He averaged 300 yards per game and was responsible for over 100 touchdowns in his 2 seasons.
Pretty good.
A hair under 30 points per game, which is obviously the highest in franchise history by a mile. I don't need to look that up. I'm just going to say it as fact. It has to be. 6 fourth quarter comebacks and 9 game-winning drives, 1 Lombardi trophy, and 1 Super Bowl MVP. Unbelievable.
And a totally viable MVP, like regular season MVP candidate this year, as we've gone over, right? So, maybe not leaving the NFL as a Super Bowl champ or anything like that this year, but he's leaving it as literally one B in the MVP discussion, which is totally mind blowing and just a testament to how fucking good he is. Like how good he is at this.
Bit of a shame, eh? Like and it's kind of badass. He didn't tell anyone he was retiring. Like think of the farewell tour he could have received. He obviously I think he had a pretty good idea he was going to hang him up, but that wasn't getting leaked during the year, and he certainly didn't want any of that extra attention. He just kind of wanted to fade out. And
Nah.
I bet you know what's an interesting topic is if had he opted for the farewell tour, Scotty, and it was known around the league that he was going to be retiring, this was going to be his last season. I wonder how that would have swayed the MVP votes because, it's totally half dozen.
Yeah, 6-1. Yeah.
Six, right? But
yeah.
it seems like the prevailing thought has been that, Rodgers is going to win based on that regular season for whatever reason, even though a lot of the metrics favor Brady and I mean the counting stats as well.
I still don't get it.
Yeah. Right?
I don't if you want to make an argument for Rodgers, okay, like obviously, and maybe it's right, but that it was just like so far and away him over Brady. I'll never understand it, but whatever. Here we are, right?
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
I don't know. It's hard to say what would have happened. Boom, like couple what you're saying there with the. I mean, we at least had one voter come out and kind of just blatantly state that they're not going to vote for Rodgers based on his vaccination stat or I don't know if it was his status as much as his comments and just general dickheadishness, right? But who knows? Like, it's humans voting. Anything could have happened.
Exactly. And I would never want that to be the reason or even a debate why Brady would have won if it was the farewell tour, whatever.
Yeah.
But goddamn, he deserved it as much as Rodgers, if not more this year, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But Tom doesn't need that. So, what it is. The only other thing I want to mention that I saw today, was, Tom Brady, in baseball, for example, WAR, wins above replacement, is the most valuable metric to evaluate a baseball player's impact on winning for his team. And Pro Football Focus has adopted that model. It started in 2006, tracking wins above replacement for football players. And since 2006, he's won that award he was the highest wins above replacement player in the league every single year. Which is pretty incredible considering, there were times when he was not operating like he was these past two seasons, statistically anyway. But obviously, according to their metrics, he was still the most valuable player in the league all those years. So
that's wild. I didn't know that one. I mean, just another absolutely mind-blowing one to come across. What favorite Brady moment? Other than the Super Bowl, other than winning the Super Bowl, favorite Brady moment in these 2 years as a Buck?
I think it was a first half. I think it was that pass to Scotty Miller
against Green Bay
in the NFC Championship last season.
Dude, it comes up in the intro video, obviously for the pod here, and it's 14-10. There's 6 seconds left or 7 seconds left before the half. And Green Bay gives up that touchdown. Like that was so backbreaking, just from a general football perspective. But what a throw, you know what I mean? What a play call! What great execution. That was awesome. And then you felt pretty good at that point.
You could argue that momentum, from that moment, the momentum the team gained just carried them right through to the finish line. It was that much of a okay, we don't give a shit. Screw convention, throw it out the window. No risk it, no biscuit. Just because I played for Bill Belichick all these years, you think I'm not willing to air it out in a moment where conservative minds and really all minds would opt for a safer play. No, let's go. I'll do what my coach wants, and I'm not afraid.
And I agree. I think that would be the one for me. You know what's, and maybe this is relatively recency bias. This game, the Antonio Brown game against the Jets, not that it obviously had the high stakes or anything like that, but just they had no business winning that game. They didn't need to win that game. They didn't have anybody playing in that game. And obviously the Jets sucked, but they looked good they were really playing solidly. It wasn't just a complete what the hell are the Bucs doing, or the Jets aren't even doing much and they're still up by double digits in the second half. But no, of course they won. You know what I mean? Of course he leads them to a win. And that's such a mark of these guys who just refuse to lose. on the nights where their team doesn't have it. You see it in basketball all the time when someone just takes over and says, like, we're going to win this game. Or a Connor McDavid in hockey, right? He just goes out and scores twice in the third because he's better than everyone, stuff like that. And Brady obviously just has that and showed it basically right up until his last play in the NFL, right? Like he did everything he could to get them to another championship game when clearly they didn't have their best stuff and were, trailing the entire game against a really good team. So yeah, that was something.
And that, like, it applies to that Jets game too. Like, shit, he threw that game-winning touchdown pass to Cyril Grayson, right? So, like, his options were very limited at that time, and he still was able to mount a comeback. So,
yeah,
really incredible. And the one person who I think needs to be acknowledged, if there is one, or at least the namesake I'll choose on behalf of the Bucs organization and their player development personnel department, is Jason Licht, the general manager, because when I talked about in that opening tribute to Tom Brady, per se, if we can call it that, him choosing Tampa Bay was surprising to a lot of people. But Tom Brady is a smart football guy, and he saw that Jason Licht and his team had built an extremely talented roster with a really nice blend of high caliber starters playing on rookie deals and proven veterans playing on reasonable short-term contracts. So the foundation was there, and Tom Brady was able to see that despite the laughingstock that the franchise had been, despite those pieces being in play, because Jameis Winston was the one in the headlines, right? He was,
right.
It was that year. So, good.
And the credibility factor that he's brought, well, and you can argue that Light has brought based on the roster he's gotten, just getting Brady to the team is huge for future potential free agents. Obviously, you can win there. People are going to who knows? It might be a bit of a lazy narrative, to be honest, because they could win because they had Brady on the team. But regardless, that's what's going to be pushed, right? Like that's what's going to happen. So, what's going on,
dude? The Raptors just traded for Miles Turner. I have to announce that. Sorry, Scott and I are big Raptors fans. Goran Dragic, Malachi Flynn, and multiple picks, sources tell ESPN. So,
good.
I love it for the Raptors personally.
That's great. Flynn, I liked Flynn, but he wasn't doing much this year. Obviously, Dragic, what the fuck? And did it say multiple firsts?
It's got to be multiple firsts. But you know what? I'm still on board with it. I've thought a lot about this. Sorry, we shouldn't even talk about this right now.
Okay, we'll get back to
sorry, folks. If you're not,
come on, the Miles Turner deal, it's always been linked to Brady. Let's be real.
We like it. Got to send out a couple texts while I'm on the air to the boys.
Yeah,
make sure they know a boom bomb. We call it. I like to be first.
Drop them. But okay, yeah. Send the text. I can talk about Brady. Sorry, I mean, we're kind of just waxing poetic about Tommy Boy here, but
don't apologize for that, Scott.
Fair enough. It can't. What we also need to remember is how bad he looked that last half a season in New England. Like, for people saying he was done, I mean, that wasn't crazy. That was not so. Like, he looked old. He looked like his arm was closer to the Peyton, like the Manning at the end of his career than certainly what it turned out to be in Tampa. So anyway, so what's going on? What do they have to? Did they have to trade Siakam too?
I got fake wojed, bro.
Collin.
On our live episode, I got the notification. It was from a fake woj account. Holy shit, man! God damn.
All right, well then. If Malachi Flynn's parents are listening, which they probably are, then I take it back. I think your son's been a great addition, and let's see if he earns some minutes in the playoffs.
God, sorry, folks. I mean, good thing we're not live on Bucs Report at the moment. I'm just more disappointed that deal wasn't real. I like that.
Yeah.
But so. I mean, Scotty, was there anything else you wanted to add in terms of Tom Brady? Oh, sorry, you were just talking about.
No, I just mean I think the fact that he was this good, it wasn't that it was just a continuation from this stellar, peak Brady at the end of New England. He looked bad. and he looked potentially done, but Tampa obviously saw enough, and they had the trust that he was going to be able to figure it out and be rejuvenated. And I mean, I like the change of scenery aspect but I was just worried, is his arm gone? Because that's more what it looked like to me. But clearly proved everyone wrong, proved me wrong, and yeah, he was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think like the arm being gone, like that was like a lot of people felt that way. But then when he was announced that he was coming to Tampa, like some guys I really respect really broke down a ton of his throws. I think it was John Ledyard did a deep dive. And he was like, dude, his arm's plenty live still. It's just sort of how they're running their offense and the lack of weapons they have there to create space and not being willing to stretch the field. And I mean, Tom obviously proved that since then. We all know that,
of course,
just to kind of justify maybe why people would have viewed it that way at the time.
Yeah. And you're right. That would have been, let's face it, kind of a layman's look at it from where I was just watching it. But there was a ton that went into it, like having no receivers and nobody pushed the ball down the field too. And, and only an okay offensive line, if I remember correctly. And then they got absolutely rolled in that home playoff game against Tennessee. And that's it. Yeah. And anyway, here we are.
So anyway, the question, that is obviously the next one to be brought up is what kind of condition are these Bucs in moving forward? Where's the franchise left? It is a state of the franchise discussion tonight, and I think it's an important one to have. So the interesting thing here is first of all, I think it's pretty clear that the Buccaneers roster and their front office feels very confident in the players they've put in place. The same core group of guys who helped to lure Tom Brady here feels that they are more than capable of competing if they can, get a serviceable quarterback in the building. Whether or not you believe that would be as a bridge for Kyle Trask, I mean, they're pretty high on Kyle Trask.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, like I'm not a big Trask guy myself at all. But again, I'm not a NFL general manager, and a lot of people think Trask would stack up very favorably amongst this year's quarterback class, potentially even. So, maybe it wasn't the worst thing that they went ahead and drafted him last season, even though I thought second round was unnecessary and we could have used that selection for a player who could have been more valuable last year. But it is what it is. That's water under the bridge at this point. So First of all, though, they're going to need to figure out this quarterback situation as soon as possible, because I expect it to have a pretty direct impact on their ability to retain some free agents. And there are quite a few of them, and some really important ones as well.
I think they're in a great spot from a general roster's point of view, man. Like, they have as many guys as anyone. And no, you're not going to replace Brady, but they might get, who knows? Like, who knows who they get at quarterback, but they're going to get someone pretty good. Like, I don't think they're going to roll out, I don't know, some sort of Mike Glennon scenario or anything like any train wreck like that. Like,
Blaine Gabbert is that scenario for us. That would be the Mike Glennon scenario.
But at least,
right.
Okay,
So
I don't like Gabbert at all.
Yeah, that would be our version of.
That would be bad. Okay, Gabbert would be bad, but I think the rest of the roster is too good for them to sit on their hands and not go and get at least a league average quarterback and just figure it out the rest from there. Because also, I think I don't know, take your pick, whoever the 14th best quarterback is in the league. Don't they win that division next year with that?
Yeah, NFC South is ripe, bro. It's real ripe right now.
Head and shoulders above the other three teams. So obviously the quarterback most important position in sports. They're losing the best one of all time. Not great. But I trust that they're going to figure it out, get someone in there that makes sense, and just keep rolling with the amount of talent that they already have. That's what I think. Maybe I'm being optimistic.
Well, no, I like it. I always talk about it. I love getting your stance on these things because you're a huge NFL guy and you're not a Bucs fan. So to me, that's always valuable because I got to kind of check myself, right? Am I being overly optimistic? So to hear that from you, I completely agree.
Yeah.
But just to make it clear, and like just because these players are all free agents doesn't mean they're not going to bring any of them back. They will.
Of course.
But we got Chris Godwin, okay, Carlton Davis, Ryan Jensen, Jordan Whitehead, Leonard Fournette, Ndamukong Suh, Rob Gronkowski, Alex Kappa, JPP, Will Golston, Aaron Stinney, Gio Bernard, Ronald Jones, and plenty more. And I mean, football contracts work that way. Like a ton of rosters, if you were to look, have a ton of guys who are technically free agents, but many of them have just kind of more or less planned it this way, and they're going to re-sign them. The Buccaneers will not be able to re-sign all these guys, nor do I expect them to like make a huge effort to re-sign all of them. So they're going to have to pick and choose a little bit, not quite like last year where they could bring everyone back. So that's something Buccaneers fans need to be prepared for.
So priority list then. Give me the top 3 of those guys that you listed.
Yeah, good question. Godwin, long-term extension, absolutely top priority. Like
100%.
He's so fucking good, Chris Godwin. He is just, I don't care. You do not let him out of the building. He's just, him and Mike Evans, that pairing, they're just, everything about them. We've talked tons about them both, and anyone who watches football knows what they bring to the table.
Dude, they were putting up huge numbers with Jameis. Give them a serviceable quarterback, they'll figure out the rest.
And Godwin is just so valuable, man.
So good, man.
He's so good in everything he can do well. He has no flaws as a receiver. It's actually ridiculous.
Okay, so that's I would have said Godwin, but I wasn't sure if I was being a little skewing towards the skill positions there. But okay, so I'm glad you said Godwin as well.
Yeah, right behind him, I have Carlton Davis. He's our best corner. He's established himself as, a number 1 corner in the NFL, undoubtedly. Not necessarily the flashy picks guy, right? Like a Trayvon Diggs or
Diggs isn't any good. So
I think a lot of people would probably rather have Carlton Davis than
shit.
Diggs. So exactly. So Diggs so Davis. So I expect him to actually get franchise tagged. I think he's the most likely scenario to be franchise tagged, just based on the position. They would like to get another year at him, work out some of the details in the books before they can try and lock him up. Or worst case, they see what happens. He tore his quad this year, so he missed a big chunk of the year.
Yeah.
Now I have a tie for my 3rd and 4th. Like my next,
I'll allow it.
Oh, wow. Didn't expect that. That's a first. Ryan Jensen and Jordan Whitehead. So, I mean, Ryan Jensen is probably a little more important if we're still in this win now mode, but I also am just so bullish on Jordan Whitehead and how much ability he has and just the way that he's trending in his career right now. It's like he is really showing anyone in the football world what he's capable of doing, especially the tail end of this year. Like we've all known he's a hard hitter, but he's just playing within the scheme of the defense, ultra aggressive, serviceable in coverage. Like he's what Jamal Adams should be, except he's been playing on a rookie deal. So that's up, and he won't be playing on a rookie deal after this year. The question is whether or not a lot of people expect Whitehead to be a bit of a cap casualty. And then Ryan Jensen, he's just kind of the heartbeat of that O-line. He brings that. He's that big nasty. He's what they needed.
He matters. He matters.
He's tough as nails. He's borderline dirty. Opposing teams hate him. He's not afraid to stand up to Fletcher Cox or the toughest SOBs, the scariest men in football.
You love it on your team.
Big
you love
ginger,
having a slightly, man. Yeah.
Big ginger staring down Fletcher Cox, trying to bring extra heat after the play. Like, give me more of that. I just love it.
Yeah, so, couldn't agree more. Like a security blanket for whoever's playing quarterback coming in, right?
Yeah.
To have as solid an offensive line as possible, and he's a very key cog in that, right? So that he would have been in my top 3 as well.
Yeah, so like tier 1, Godwin and Carlton Davis. Tier 2, Ryan Jensen and Jordan Whitehead. And then tier 3 is Gronk, Ndamukong Suh, and Leonard Fournette. And like Whitehead, I would like a long-term extension for. Franchise tag Carlton Davis, as I suggested. Long-term extension for Godwin. Jensen, I'd like it to be like a short to medium-term extension. He's in his early 30s, whatever. But Gronk, Suh, and Fournette, like ideally, at least for Suh and Gronk, it would be like a 1-year deal. Like Suh's been totally comfortable riding off those. So has Gronk these last couple years. Would be great if they would do it again. We'll see if Gronk even plays though, right? Like
Gronk, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, total wild card. I'm a little concerned that we didn't if Sue somehow were ever to find out, that we didn't put him in the top 3, that he's just gonna like power bomb me through this table here. Put some respect on his name, obviously. But yeah, I think that's dead on. The Gronk factor is, yeah, who knows? I think you can probably live with Sue walking, unfortunately, at this point, but just based on age, years in the league, like this is what happens. It's just the fact that they returned everyone from the Super Bowl team, that doesn't happen, right? So, Bucs fans obviously and understandably will be ready for some changes that are inevitably going to be coming this offseason.
Yeah, and like how you just described Sue, I'm a little more in favor of bringing him back because he secretly had a really good year. Like Jason Pierre-Paul is a guy who I'm like, please don't let's just kind of cut ties with the JPP thing, give him his flowers.
Yeah,
he's earned that for being a gritty warrior. But let's get Tryon Shoyinka on that other bookend opposite of Shaq Barrett. Like we didn't even have our best edge rusher because it's like we owed this to Jason Pierre-Paul. I hate having to even do that. Like it's just an awkward thing. We're in the NFL. Play the best player.
I agree.
Come on. So I almost think that's a guarantee. Whereas Ndamukong Suh, like let's see what happens. He wants to win, but he seems to like it in Tampa, and I certainly like having him there. And the same goes for Will Golston, who's like the longest serving Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He's one of the more underrated players in football. Big, tall, tough D tackle. He doesn't play full snap count, but he's really solid, man. Really solid, strong run supporter. He can get to the quarterback on occasion, especially when the Bucs have been undermanned on their D line. He's stepped up in the past. So another team like Sue and him have this veteran presence about them and leadership roles within the locker room that I think are really valuable, and I'd love to have them back. But again, I'm not going to freak out if they don't have them back, if it means we get to bring those tier 1 and tier 2 guys I mentioned, Godwin, Davis, Jensen, and Whitehead. So that's kind of where I'm at. You gotta be realistic. If we get I think we're guaranteed, I would say guaranteed of those top 4 guys I mentioned to bring 3 back. I feel really good about. If we get 4, I'll be ecstatic. 4 of those.
That would be 3. 3 would be great.
Yeah.
And you would, as long as Godwin, I think, is one of the 3, then you get, or one of the 4, then you get 2 of the other 3. I think you're feeling pretty good about that. And just like for continuity's sake, just for general roster talent's sake, just keeping that level up. And man, I it's hard. Like these are gonna be hard decisions. It's not just so cut and dry. They'll have to figure it out, see what's offered elsewhere for these guys, and go from there.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And have faith. You got to have faith in Jason Licht because guy
he's earned it.
He has. He's really we got the NFL draft. We got all our picks.
Can you see the light? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But he's really established himself as one of the better drafting general managers in the NFL based on his recent draft history. And I think unless we want to talk about potential quarterback options, for the Buccaneers, it really is just speculation at this point. We already mentioned Gabbert to Trask Bridge, not ideal. And the guys who Bucs fans are fantasizing about most, myself included, aren't technically on the market in Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. Derek Carr's a name, Kirk Cousins. Like these are names that have been floated around the Buccasphere. Yeah.
And that's just there's going to be so much speculation right now about those bigger names. We've talked about that Gabbert to Trask bridge. That is not a bridge that I would feel safe driving on. Wouldn't feel safe walking on, anything like that. I don't see it from Trask at all, personally. I didn't see it in college, to be honest. That Florida team he was on, they had a really good record, but I thought he's throwing absolute pillows out there, like zero velocity on the ball. And I just don't see him fitting balls into tight windows when you need it at the NFL level. He's probably maybe he can carve out a career as a backup. Don't get me wrong. That'd be great. But for this team, they're going to have to go bigger. I would assume. Although it is hard when you draft a quarterback in the second round. And if they like him, they're going to want to give him a shot, right?
Yeah, and I mean, anyone who's read my work at bucksbanter.ca, I mean, I was quite critical of the Trask pick. I gave it a D. I just didn't see him as a second round grade, though he was the last pick in the second round. But still, I would have preferred Davis Mills myself, over Trask. I had him rated higher. So I was really not a huge fan of that. But
We'll see.
we'll see, right? We'll see. He's my other thing is he's throwing to Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney, like he had incredible guys who he could throw pillows up to.
Dude,
And they,
a lot of bubble screens. You know what I mean? A lot of DBs playing 8 yards off and just pitching it out to him. Pitts also a monster after the catch. Like, sir, I'm not trying to hear to slander Trask's college accolades or anything like that. I just don't. I never saw it. I remember just watching Florida and thinking this is a nice college quarterback that will play in the CFL. I actually said that to my dad. We were watching a game. And but anyway, we'll see what happens there. There's so many names that are being thrown around. I mean, yeah, you probably want Russell Wilson, right? Like he's really good. That's probably the top of the list, I would imagine. I don't know. I don't, with all these quarterback things, like you need a domino to fall in order for anything to actually happen, right? So, like, do you know anything? Have we heard anything new? Like, it's not like I've been looking
No.
directly at what the Bucs have been, where they've been leaning or anything like that.
No, we have no insight into that, which again is why I have trouble speculating much. One name I haven't heard about at all, but I could see is interestingly enough, Tom Brady's nemesis is Nick Foles. As a guy potentially capable of stepping in and taking advantage.
Would you rather Foles than Gabbert next year?
So here's the thing, Scott, and we texted about it a little bit, and I know it was just it was appalling to you and Bodan that I was in a Twitter debate with someone where I was vouching for Blaine Gabbert as a better option than Gardner Minshew. And what I was like,
this is what we do, folks. This is what we do.
Yeah. That's why we actually didn't. That's why we didn't record last week. We were all in a big fight in our Gardner Minshew.
We were too upset.
Yeah. But what I think they love Gabbert, the Bucs coaching staff, and one thing he does have is arm talent, and I just wonder, he knows this system so well, being here with Tom Brady, and I just he still has a great arm. That's never been an issue for Gabbert. When he was younger, he certainly didn't know how to use it or how to think or how to read defenses properly, and I think that cost him. But I wonder if he's just entered a new phase where he could actually be more serviceable than it's not. Almost what I'm saying is it's not the Gabbert we've seen now. It could be a totally different guy, and if those physical tools are still there, maybe it's not the worst case option. Certainly not as bad as
Yeah, just the way you're putting it, because hasn't been a starter. We haven't actually seen him in forever. This is kind of the longest red shirt season in history, right? It's not. I mean, do I think that Blaine Gabbert has secretly come out and become a starting level quarterback? Yeah, probably not, based on history and everything like that. But the way you're describing it is that being in the system, learning the league more in general. I wouldn't be shocked if he was markedly better and serviceable. That's not what I would predict, but I wouldn't be shocked either. And if the Bucs see it, they're not going to put some sitting duck out there. They have enough guys. They're going to go try to win, and they're certainly going to try to win that division. So if Gabbert is the guy that they go with and they inherently trust him and all that, then I would trust the Bucs brass that they made the right decision.
It's a good way to put it. Put it. Nice way to rationalize it. And they've earned that, right? Their management. And
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I alluded to Jason Licht's draft history. I just, because, it's NFL draft season now, which is obviously some of our favorite times of the year, the draft. I mean, it's the best. And it's been different, with the Buccaneers last year drafting half their picks for special teams and being in that rare situation, coming off a Super Bowl, returning everyone. Where it wasn't quite the same as it has been for Buccaneers fans over the past, almost 20 years before this past season. But just to like, so I said Jason Light's been one of the better drafting general managers in the NFL. I want to go through a couple, like his last few drafts. Like, so in terms of 2021, this past draft, he took Joe Tryon-Shanko with the last pick in the first round, then Trask. You know, Scott and I both not huge Trask guys, felt it was an early pick. KJ Britt, Grant Stewart, a couple special teams guys. The Darden pick not looking great, especially when he moved up. Who knows? Anyway, it's too early to tell with those guys, okay? Tryon looks good. Darden looks bad. Added immediate impact for special teams. Going back, though, the 3 years prior, 2020, Tristan Wirfs in the first round, Antoine Winfield Jr. in the second round. That alone, I mean, is an unbelievable haul. You're talking about potentially 2 perennial all-pro players at their positions, and they're both have only played 2 years in the league. You like that's a home run. I think a lot of teams would trade like 2 full draft
2
classes,
home runs.
you know, like absolute home runs. So you throw in Tyler Johnson, who I was really high on coming into this year, and like in the 5th, and Keyshawn Vaughn. Obviously, Tyler Johnson, I think most Bucs fans are pretty sour on right now, but doesn't matter. Drafted 2 players that good. Enough said. 2009.
Where do they get Johnson? Where do they get Johnson?
5th round. I don't remember exactly which pick.
Okay, fifth round.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay.
And he was so good as a college receiver. You're kind of like, oh, 5th. Like I assumed it'd be like 3rd or 4th. Like I imagine, like for someone who knows how his acumen as a collegiate player. But he's certainly playing more like a 5th rounder than a 3rd or 4th. Now, 2019, Devin White, Sean Murphy Bunting. Sorry, round 1, Devin White. Round 2, Sean Murphy Bunting. Round 3, Jamel Dean. Round 3, Mike Edwards. Round 4, Anthony Nelson. And round 6, Scotty Miller. So my assessment there, you got 4 starters you've drafted on a Super Bowl winning team. Devin White was incredible, looking like, you know, he's had a tough year this year, but still a fine pick. He helped lead them to a Super Bowl and was a massive factor in that. I mean, undisputed.
Yes. No issues.
And whatever you think about those DBs I mentioned after, Murphy Bunting, Jamel Dean, and Mike Edwards, those were all starters. So that's 4 starters on a Super Bowl winning team, and Scotty Miller, who was a massive contributor during that run, as well as Anthony Nelson, who's shown lots of reasons that Bucs fans should want to keep him around as well. He's been surprisingly productive. So, you know, NFL draft, these guys are striking out way more than they're hitting on players. Yeah. And if you got 4 Super Bowl caliber starters, which is exactly what happened, and one of them being a major, major difference maker in Devin White during that Super Bowl whole entire season last year, you know, that's another home run draft.
Yeah.
Last one I want to cover here is 2018. So this will be, you know, going back 4 years. This is my favorite one of his drafts. Vita Vea in the first round. Stud, locked and loaded. Ronald Jones in the second round. Like showed flashes, but probably not worthy.
At the time, liked it.
Yeah. Carlton Davis later in the second round. Absolute steal.
Great.
Alex Kappa in the 3rd round out of a small school, not even D1, has proven to be, he's going to be in very high demand this offseason as a right guard. And then Jordan Whitehead in the 4th round, safety out of West Virginia, who I've already talked about how badly I want him back. And, you know, he's in the top upper echelon of safeties potentially right now. So Vea, Carlton Davis, Alex Kappa, and Jordan Whitehead. So not only is this 4 more starters from that Super Bowl team and important ones, but like a way more impressive crop than that one in 2019, if you consider those guys I mentioned and how they've been over the course of their rookie deals. Like this is like prime time contributors, super valuable players, not just guys who are starters, but like impactful starters who have been essential to the success of the team. So like what a draft that was.
That's honestly, there are teams, it's hard to imagine a team that has drafted as many contributors. I don't even want to say contributors because that almost like demeans it a little bit. Like key contributors and starters in a 4-year stretch than that right now that's currently in the league, right? There are teams who in a 3-year stretch might have 2 guys from those picks that are actually playing for their team. Like that's incredible that all of those guys were in that. I mean, I know, and it's relatively recent, just the last 4 years or whatever, but wow. But just when you hear a listed like that, like Jesus, that's unreal.
Yeah, 8 of those starters from that Super Bowl winning team drafted in 2018, 2019, all drafted, brought up in-house. Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, man. So Jason Licht deserves his credit for how he's built this team. And, hearing some of those names, knowing, they were identified by this Buccaneers personnel department and trained accordingly and have proven to be successful. So have faith in Jason Licht. And as we approach this 2022 NFL draft, I mean, you got to wonder, like, what are the Bucs positional priorities per se? I would say they're in a position where they can still go best available. I think a wide receiver or an interior defensive lineman in the first are two areas where there's some solid players in depth in this draft from my early research here.
So what are they going to draft? Like 27th or something around there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
27 right on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if we're talking like a D tackle, like Sue and Golston are both free agents, as we mentioned, and both up there in years. So you got Vita Vea, you've just re-signed. You want someone to pair next to him. That's very important. You've already got 2 edge rushers ready to rock for next season that we talked about in JTS and Jack Barrett. So that's an option. But also, I mean, that wide receiver position, they desperately need a high-quality wide receiver 3. That was proven this year when the likes of Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson and, just anyone else on the roster was unable to really step up or remain healthy in the case of Perriman or Cyril Grayson. But the AB shit, the unfortunate Godwin injury, the Bucs were crippled at a position that was one of the strongest position groups in the entire NFL last year. Of all position groups, it was that dominant.
Yeah.
They got to do it while they have Godwin, if they're able to re-sign him and Evans in place. I think, add a little more mustard to that condiment drawer. Probably a good decision there. And there's lots of really good receivers, like with, in that round 1, round 2 area. So
any you got your particular eye on?
Man, there's such a good crop of receivers. I'm curious to dig into their tape more to properly assess them. You know what I mean? So before I start, like, I don't want to stack them up against each other. A lot of people are speculating that Dotson from Penn State's a really nice fit. I mean, I have a weird thing for Chris Olave. I feel like he's kind of getting slept on a little bit amongst the receiver core. Throughout the regular season, he was like considered like wide receiver 1, and now all of a sudden he's like wide receiver 6. And I'm kind of like, I don't know, like Olave's pretty damn good at getting open. He's got that Keenan Allen-ness to him.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
And he's going to be good. I didn't know that he had dropped that, like his perception had dropped. It's because the other guys on Ohio State, the younger guys, were just so incredible as well. But Olave's, I mean, I hate that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like him at all, but he's incredible at football, and that's super surprising. If he were to dip, I mean, that feels like a steal for someone. I don't know. What if he was the 6th receiver taken? Yeah, so what? Probably end of the first, early second kind of thing. But
right around where the Buccaneers are selecting. Around.
Well,
I'd be ecstatic to come away with some Chris Olave.
I'm literally I haven't looked too much. Like, obviously we're going to be doing a lot more draft prep coming up after the Super Bowl and digging into it a little bit more. But yeah, that's legit shocking to me about them, or about him. But
yeah, like he's not even the top prospect on his team. It seems almost like pretty unanimous that he's like, behind Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Dotson, who I mentioned, Burke from Arkansas. Dotson,
he's good.
Yeah, Dotson from Penn State, right? So that there's a bunch of guys. So it's very much, similar to all positions, I guess. But with this receiving group, one thing that's for sure is it's a very talented group, and different types of receivers are available. Oh, Jameson Williams. I didn't even mention Jameson Williams either.
Oh, of course. Right.
Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot of depth. Yeah, there's a lot of guys. So,
and it just will kind of be pick your poison. What's your preference? Who you willing to bank on? But I could totally see this being a year where Jason Licht goes back to that first round where he once took Mike Evans, and look at how that's paid off for him. Right, that was his first ever selection as a Buccaneers general manager. Actually, Mike Evans.
Wow,
which is pretty cool.
Wow, yeah, that's nice to have on the resume for sure.
Yeah, literally an iconic Buccaneer at this point.
Yeah. As important and likable as anyone that's played for the team, probably, right?
Totally. Yeah. He's an all-timer, Mike Evans, and he's still going strong. He hasn't had a year where he's had less than 1,000 receiving yards. So, and
is it?
Double-digit
but
touchdowns.
I mean,
God.
this guy's gonna catch a stray here, but isn't it so like, was it Manziel or Mike Evans? You know what I mean? It's like I wonder who was more important, or who made who kind of thing. It's like, well, that that mystery was solved pretty early on in the process here when they were playing in the NFL. So because
Yeah.
people like
And the way they played, right? Manziel would just scramble around and toss it
just
up.
scramble and toss it. Yeah,
But then
exactly.
it's like, I guess, do you realize,
Yeah, because
like, every time Mike Evans is like, how many times do you see him have like 2 TDs by halftime?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Oh, he's so good.
he was sick. Yeah, Mike Evans
Yeah,
was awesome at
he is
A&M.
awesome.
And then the other positions, Buccaneers, I could see putting some extra attention on. Obviously, is edge rusher still. You want depth there, but interior offensive linemen with Ryan Jensen and Kappa both hitting free agency. I don't expect the Bucs to be able to resign Kappa because he's played himself into a nice payday, and they won't be able to prioritize him, especially when they drafted Robert Hainsey out of Notre Dame last year in the third. And then Aaron Stinney's another guy, a depth piece who can play guard, who they'd probably like to bring back. They had re-upped him on a 1-year deal for this season. And cornerback, right? Carlton Davis. Can't have enough corners. We know Todd Bowles feels that way, and Bruce Arians and Jason Licht. They've talked about it many times. And mentioning all those starters, Dean, Davis, Sean Murphy, Bunting, like those are all guys they weren't afraid to just keep unloading on and hoping they would hit some of them. And it wasn't the worst philosophy, really, in those 2 through 4 rounds. So cornerback's an option as well. Plenty of good corners. So I'm really excited as I'm starting to kind of dig into the draft a little bit, and we'll be doing so. We'll be giving you lots of good NFL draft coverage, especially focused on the Tampa Bay Bucs. But the Senior Bowl, speaking of Jason Licht, I mean, the Senior Bowl went down this past weekend and last week. So that's huge. Jason Licht has always prioritized the Senior Bowl. It's been a huge deal for him. And I think regardless of how you think about that, it gives these general managers and player personnel executives an opportunity to see these players practice against each other, to get a live look at them up close and personal. They get tons of interview time where they can sit down with them. Like, so it's proven to be, it's just growing. It's getting tons of steam. Shout out to Jim Nagy for what he's done with just the whole Senior Bowl week down there in Mobile, Alabama. But so that's come and gone. And the cool thing about it was, in terms of this important showcase for draft prospects, is just the fact that, 4 out of the top 5 quarterback prospects were all there playing, right? So, like, this is such an interesting year of quarterbacks, Scotty, like we mentioned earlier. Like, it could go any which way. We were just talking about the receivers. Same idea in terms of no consensus necessarily, or not much consensus with quarterbacks. They're just not as good as the receiver class.
Yeah, I love when there's parity among the top between the quarterbacks, because nobody knows, and it's all just to preference. Basically, it's not not like when Andrew Luck was coming out, or well, even then there was RG3, but still, yeah, there's not the surefire. All 32 teams would take this guy with the first pick if he was there, right? So that makes it really fun. Because then you get all the bust talk and who could have fallen where, and this team actually liked this guy, but whatever, they didn't end up pulling the trigger. All that stuff, it makes it so much more interesting, and the quarterbacks are super interesting in general, right? So, I mean, I don't know about you. I'm a big Kenny Pickett guy. I think he's super fun. I think he's going to step in and just be ready to play. He's like, this is more cliche, less X's and O's based. He seems like he just doesn't give a shit. He's going to think he's the best guy on the field immediately. I kind of like that swag going in. But I think he's just a really good quarterback. Like I watched 4 or 5 pick games this year. He can make all the throws. He just has a good feel for the game. And, his running ability is obviously a huge, it's just a huge bonus as well.
He's definitely got that. Speaking of swag and just like Kenny Pickett, like I would say he has, though, with those 2 gloves, about as much swag as a white picket fence in front of like a modern multi-million-dollar home. Okay. I hate 2 gloves. I hate 2 gloves.
Obviously, the 2 gloves are an issue. I've already sent a couple emails to his team about it. I mean, please don't. Like, just don't. Maybe he'll just get made fun of enough in locker rooms in the NFL to get rid of him, because it's bad. It's bad. And you're right. Obviously, that's not going to swag down I don't know how many levels here. I just mean the way he actually plays. it feels like, and then you see those 2 gloves and you really just want to die. So yeah.
I knew what you meant. I just had to.
Yeah, no, I know, but you're right. It needed to be mentioned. You're right.
Yes. But yeah, man,
Yeah.
Pickett seems legit. I mean, it seems like almost, again, he could go any which way. I saw Sam Howell out on top of someone's board today. I've seen Desmond Ridder on top of guys' boards, the quarterback out of Cincinnati. Malik Willis, though, is a guy who benefited the most out of the quarterbacks, arguably at the Senior Bowl in terms of his performance. We had Brian Lamb. He runs the draft lounge. He was down there in Mobile all week, and he was going to come on tonight, but unfortunately couldn't make our time. He got called in to do some other work, so he wasn't able to make it. But I chatted with him before we came on, and he echoed those same sentiments of what I've been hearing, and I know what Scott's been hearing as well. In terms of Malik Willis really kind of showing out some of that tantalizing potential that he has, that's so difficult to assess when he's playing for Liberty, right? So here they get to see him against, future NFLers, some damn good ones. And in some ways, it sounds like he created quite a name for himself, and he really impressed in interviews as well.
Well, yeah, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah that tweeted it out about Malik Harris being the I don't know if he said the best player, just the guy who's helped himself the most, and that's high praise, right? Like that guy's as good as it gets. Obviously, I know Collin, you respect him a ton, and follow his work very closely. So if he's saying that, then I really feel like it holds some weight here. So yeah, what a story if the guy from Liberty is going to be the first quarterback taken. Like that's really something.
Yeah. So he's a guy, like, we're going to try and get out of here quick. We're not going to cover the Senior Bowl a ton because I mean, we weren't there. So it's more just of what we've heard and what players have helped themselves. We talked about the receivers, heard from numerous people. Christian Watson out of North Dakota State has been really skyrocketing up draft boards based on his dominant performance all week. He's similar to like Mike Evans at A&M, actually, in the way that he's got like this big body and established deep threat at the collegiate level. Was catching balls from Trey Lance last college season. But he's proven he could kind of do other things as a receiver as well, create separation, run intermediate routes, like stuff like that. And I guess he was really going to work on some of these corners, which, by the way, it's important to note, there's a couple positions that are kind of at a disadvantage in terms of how they're evaluated in these one-on-one drills. And I think cornerbacks and offensive linemen are those who it's kind of unfair. Like, because in a real game, the pass rusher has to, if we're talking about the O-lineman, the pass rusher doesn't know if it's a run or a pass. It's not just a straight up one-on-one. And they're having to deal with pulling guards. Like, there's all these types of schemes.
All this stuff. Yeah.
So unfair. And then with corners, there's no safety over top. They're like, it's just, you're literally on an island. Like, I would hope some of the receivers are catching a lot of balls. So
yeah,
I just want to throw that out there. But Christian Watson is Christian Watson's a receiver though who made a real name for himself, and I've heard that from tons of people I respect. Excuse me.
And from everything I've read about these Senior Bowls, for the guys that are coming at it from a lesser level, or like even certain parts of D1, like the Mountain West versus an SEC team, but especially if you're at like North Dakota State, or obviously they have a lot of precedent of having guys get drafted and do well, but they really need to see it against the best, right? So these weeks really matter for those guys. So for the lower level, I don't want to say the lower level talent, but the guys from the lower level schools to come in and show out is really eye-opening, and just shows how good they are. And obviously they could have competed at every level in college, right? So
great point. Speaking of that, Scott, there's a guy named Trevor Penning. He's an offensive tackle, like a potential first rounder, mountain of a guy out of Northern Iowa. And he was taking some heat because he was playing so hard through the whistle, like shoving heads to the ground.
He knows.
So, but it's exactly what you're saying, right? This is his chance to show that he's hungry, and he showed it, man. And this is still football. So as much as some people would scoff at that and be like, dude, what are you doing playing off the whistle? A lot of these old school football guys fucking love it. They just want to see you face wash a guy in the dirt or artificial grass after the whistle, right? That's what they want. So I think good on him for being the villain.
Yeah, for sure. Like, this boy's mean. He doesn't care about he's just gonna play all that old football shit, right? And like, hey, if the evaluators like it, then that's the best way for this guy to get drafted and get a job. So he knows it, and good for him for doing it.
Totally. Now, probably the best prospect overall who was there was Jermaine Johnson, who's the edge rusher out of Florida State. He was playing behind Azeez Ojulari in Georgia last season, and obviously wasn't getting as many reps because he's, Georgia Bulldogs have a pretty good defense. But if you didn't hear,
good.
Yeah. But anyway, he transferred to Florida State and had a fantastic year. And I think a lot of people, he was a guy who kind of could at least confirm what he put on tape this year at minimum. And a lot of people were curious to see if he would, as we mentioned, playing against this other talent. And he proved to be the best player there by far, it sounds like, in terms of a talented edge rusher, cemented himself as a first rounder. So, for all our Florida folks, Bucs fans, you're very familiar with Jermaine Johnson, I'm sure, playing for the Seminoles. So we'll probably see his name called day one. And then just 2 D tackles I want to mention who were there, who played apparently really well. Perrion Winfrey out of Oklahoma, defensive tackle. I guess he was just lighting an interior offensive lineman up. And Travis Jones, D tackle out of the University of Connecticut, who's just like a behemoth, like a 6'4", 330-pound dude who's just angry and mean. So could you imagine him next to like Vita Vea?
Yes, that sounds amazing. Wow, someone from UConn being even considered to be drafted in the NFL is a win in and of itself, because I think they're going to cancel the program pretty soon here. So that's saying something. He must be unbelievable.
No kidding, eh? Especially as a D tackle.
What the fuck? Why is he there?
Yeah.
But hey, once again, more power to him. If he makes it, he makes it. It's even more impressive. So good for him.
You got it. So there you have it. I think we've covered a good amount of stuff. We've had our sentimental reflection on Tom Brady's career, more so his time spent as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer and helping to bring the franchise back to relevance. And hopefully he's left them in good hands based partly on the work that Jason Licht has done. So we also talked about the condition of the Bucs, the state of the franchise, their free agency, how they might attack the draft. And we closed off with a little bit of Senior Bowl discussion. So thanks for joining me, Scotty. Really appreciate it.
No worries. If I could just give one Tom Brady thing, it's going to just quickly here to end, just from a Michigan standpoint. I mean, a lot of Tom Brady's story has been told, right? Like, this isn't saying anything new, but there's always a ton of quarterback talent there. They were breeding Drew Henson to come in and be the savior. He was the golden child and all this. And, Brady stayed. He had a good senior season. That they had this epic win over Alabama in the Orange Bowl. That I think that propelled him. I mean, not that it propelled him to get drafted high, but even just to be more on people's radars as such a winner and a competitor. And they weren't like a huge underdog or anything, but Alabama was definitely favored in the game, and he was the best player. And I liked him all the whole time he was at Michigan, but that Orange Bowl win was like, it's important to win those games. And as a fan, you really want to see it. And I'll always remember it. On New Year's Day, Alabama missed an extra point that would have sent it into a second overtime. And it was just awesome. And an all-time Wolverine, an all-time player, obviously. And so cool that he ended up on your team here for these last few years, so we could, let's face it, talk about him every week, which has been awesome. So
yeah, and I feel like we didn't take it for granted. Thank you for bringing that full circle as a Michigan fan. That's kind of funny, eh? Started with you and ended with me. But we all, none of us loved him in the middle because he was just kind of making football boring because he's too damn good.
That's true.
And you know where else he starred, Scotty, was the Senior Bowl.
Played very
well in the Senior Bowl, Tom Brady. So, while you're here, if you're catching this episode live, I know our Bucs Report feed was down tonight, so we didn't have as much audience interaction / which was unfortunate. But regardless, if you're listening on the podcast or check us out on YouTube, please like and subscribe and all that jazz. Helps us out a ton. Thank you for listening to the Bucs Banter podcast. We'll be back this Friday with a Super Bowl preview with our guy Bodan, and we'll be covering some bets, some leans for the game, what we like, and just kind of talking about the last football game of the season. So thanks so much, and talk to you Friday night.